You restore every heart that is broken, and great are you, Lord. Is your breath in our lungs, so we pour out our praise, we pour out our praise. It's your breath in our lungs, so we pour out our praise to you only. It's your breath in our lungs, so we pour out our praise, we pour out our praise. It's your breath in our lungs, so we pour out our praise to you only. And all the earth will shout your praise. Our hearts will cry, these bones will sing. Great are you, Lord. And all the earth will shout your praise. Our hearts will cry, these bones will sing. Great are you, Lord. And all the earth will shout your praise. Our hearts will cry, these bones will sing. Great are you, Lord. And all the earth will shout your praise. Our hearts will cry, these bones will sing. Great are you, Lord. Is your breath in our lungs, so we pour out our praise, we pour out our praise. It's your breath in our lungs, so we pour out our praise to you only. It's your breath in our lungs, so we pour out our praise, we pour out our praise. It's your breath in our lungs, so we pour out our praise to you only. Great are you, Lord.
Good morning and welcome to Online Worship at St. Peter's. Thank you so much for joining us today, and if it's your first time here, we want to extend a very special welcome to you. This morning we'd like to give you a free gift. St. Peter's has access to a huge video library of faith-based videos called Right Now Media. We'd like to give you free access to those videos that you can view whenever and wherever you want, on your phone, tablet, computer, or even your smart TV. This library includes content for all ages and stages of life. There are video resources to help you with parenting, marriage, discipleship, and more. To get access, you can visit the link below in the video description, or you can use your smartphone and scan the QR code on the screen. This morning, we continue to make our way through our Bible Gems to Remember book. We encourage you to follow along with us as we read about the story of David becoming king this morning. The Israelites had a king named Saul, but he began ignoring God and stopped obeying him. God then rejected Saul and told his prophet Samuel to go to the town of Bethlehem to choose a new king. God told Samuel that the new king would be the son of a man named Jesse. Once Samuel saw Jesse's son David, God told him that he would become the new king. To find out more, you can read this story starting on page 110 of your illustrated Bible. We would also love the opportunity to pray with you this morning. No matter what you're going through, whether you're struggling or celebrating, we want to join with you in prayer. If you're watching our interactive stream this morning, you can click on the request prayer button below this video, or you can send an email to prayer@stpetersedina.org. Just let us know your request and our prayer team will be happy to lift you up in prayer. Thank you so much again for joining us today. Now let's jump into our service with our kids' message.
Once there was a shepherd boy named David. He was small and he was a boy. He looked like 16 or something like that. He spent his days petting sheep. Pet, 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 pet. Someone put the oil on his head because he needed to wash it. He didn't need to wash his hair. He was going to be king. The end.
That's definitely the shortest STP Kids video yet. Sometimes God-sized work doesn't take a lot of explaining. Samuel was God's servant who listened to what God said and told God's people the message from the Lord. The search was on for the next king. A young boy was selected to be the king. Let's start at the end of the story. As soon as Samuel saw David, God told him, "He's the one. Pour oil on his head to show that I've chosen him. David loves me. He will be the new king." Now, how did we get here? God's people had a new land. Now they wanted a king. But God is your king, Samuel told them. He's the one who looks after you best. But he was not just the king, but the king. "We want a real king," they said, "one we can see." God knew that a king might not be kind to his people or look after them as well as he would. But God's people didn't care. They wanted a king, and they wanted him now. So God gave them a king. Samuel was a prophet, one of God's messengers. God spoke to Samuel, and Samuel told the Israelites what God wanted them to do. When Samuel grew old, the people asked for a king. This upset Samuel because God was their king. Samuel warned the people that they were making a mistake, but they would not listen. So God told Samuel to give them what they wanted. God chose a man named Saul to be king. Samuel poured oil on Saul's head as a sign that God had chosen him. Then Samuel brought Saul in front of the people, saying, "God has given you this man to be your king." Everyone cheered, shouting, "Long live the king!" Saul was a good king for a while, but then he started ignoring Samuel and God. He didn't love God enough to obey him. So God rejected Saul. He was still the king, but God wasn't with him anymore. The king became proud and stopped listening to God. He didn't obey God. He didn't love God. It was as if God was saying, "Saul can't help me with my plan. I need a king who loves me and will teach my people to love me. I need a true king." And God had just the one in mind. God had used all sorts of individuals through the years. Some were godly and willing. Some were unlikely and disobedient. Some looked the part. Some didn't seem likely to be able to accomplish anything. Now, David was a shepherd, but when God looked at him, he saw a king. And Samuel performs the ancient anointing ceremony that had been performed on Israel's priests, pouring oil over David's head. David was appointed as the real King of Israel with no fanfare, no crowds. He's the true King of Israel. He was anointed in his own living room. But that's the catch. No one else knows it yet. A chosen king. And sure enough, when David grew up, that's just what he became. And David was a great king. He had a heart like God's heart, full of love. Now, that didn't mean he was perfect, because he did some terrible things. He even had an affair with a woman and murdered her husband to try to cover it all up. David made a big mess of his life. But God can even take the biggest mess and make it work in his plan. David called out to God, "I need a new heart, Lord." David prayed, "Because mine is full of sin. Make me clean inside." And God forgave David, and God made a promise. "I will make your name great, David, and one day a king will be born into your family, and he will heal the whole world." David loved the Lord. He yearned to be near God. He prayed to him. He wrote praises called psalms to sing to him. And most important of all, he did everything God wanted him to do. Now, that's love. The Psalms of David, and there's 73 of them, they're filled with messages of love because of what God has done for him. Let me just share a few of the possibilities that we have. Psalm 27, "The Lord is my light and my salvation. Whom shall I fear? The Lord is the stronghold of my life. Of whom shall I be afraid?" Psalm 29, "The Lord gives strength to his people. The Lord blesses his people with peace." Turn the page. Psalm 32. "Blessed is the one whose transgressions are forgiven, whose sins are covered. Blessed is the one whose sin the Lord does not count against them, and in whose spirit there is no deceit." Psalm 34. "I sought the Lord, and he answered me. He delivered me from all my fears." And we can keep going with powerful psalms. Psalm 51, "Have mercy on me, O God, according to your unfailing love. According to your great compassion, blot out my transgressions. Wash away all my iniquity, and cleanse me from all my sin." Psalm 54, "Surely God is my help, the one who sustains me." This is Psalm 55. "As for me, I call to God, and the Lord saves me. Evening and morning and noon I cry out in distress, and he hears my voice." Psalm 56. "When I am afraid, I put my trust in you. In God, whose word I praise. In God I trust, and I'm not afraid. What can mere mortals do to me?" God loves you now, and he'll love you forever. David had a way of describing what that love was like. Psalm 62, "Truly my soul finds rest in God. My salvation comes from him. Truly he is my rock and my salvation. He is my fortress. I will never be shaken." You can depend on him. What set David apart was that he knew what it was to love the Lord. The more time he spent focused on the Lord, the more he knew God's love. Because that always results in love. David knew about love. He learned it from caring for sheep. They needed attention. They needed togetherness. And there's a bond between the shepherd and sheep that grows and makes them inseparable from each other. The most famous Psalm of David is Psalm 23. It's the Psalm of the shepherd boy. God is my shepherd, and I am his little lamb. Wherever I go, I know God's never stopping, never giving up, with an always and forever love. Would you read Psalm 23 along with me? The Lord is my shepherd, I lack nothing. He makes me lie down in green pastures. He leads me beside quiet waters. He refreshes my soul. He guides me along the right paths for his name's sake. Even though I walk through the darkest valley, I will fear no evil, for you are with me. Your rod and your staff, they comfort me. You prepare a table before me in the presence of my enemies. You anoint my head with oil. My cup overflows. Surely your goodness and love will follow me all the days of my life, and I will dwell in the house of the Lord forever. God gave David that song to sing to his people so they could know that he loved them and would always look after them like a shepherd loves his sheep. And one day, God was going to show his people once and for all just how much he loved them. Another shepherd was coming, a greater shepherd. He would be called the Good Shepherd. And this shepherd was going to lead all of God's lambs back to the place where they had always belonged, close to God's heart. The Good Shepherd is the King with a capital K. In fact, he was and will always be the King of Kings, Jesus. There are many commands, decrees, and laws that the Lord asks of us. Every one of them is asked because of the depth of his love. Yet there's one that's identified as great. It's our biblical blessing today. It includes our Bible gem for today, love the Lord. From Deuteronomy chapter 6. Love the Lord your God with all your heart, and with all your soul, and with all your strength. These commandments that I give you today are to be on your hearts. Impress them on your children. Talk about them when you sit at home and when you walk along the road, when you lie down and when you get up. Oh, how good it is to love the Lord.